The Tales of a Red Clay Rambler is made possible in part by Starworks, host of the 2022 Woodfire NC International Conference. The conference will kick off May the 21st with two pre-conference events happening simultaneously in Asheville and Seagrove, where visiting artists will load and fire a variety of wood-firing kilns. The main conference runs from May the 26th to the 29th at Starworks in Star, North Carolina, and features artists from around the world discussing the future of wood-fired ceramics. For more information, please visit woodfirenc.com. Welcome to the Tales of a Red Clay Rambler podcast, featuring interviews with culture makers from around the world. This is Ben Carter. I'm going to be your host. If you'd like more information on the show, please visit our website, talesofaredclayrambler.com.
Hi, this is Sara Truman, and I'm guest hosting this episode of Tales of the Red Clay Rambler this week. I'm here with my partner, Dr. Naomi Mostkoff, and we're going to talk to you about parenting and finding a balance between work and life. We live here in sunny Gainesville, Florida. I work as a potter and educator in our Studio TM Pottery and Clay, and Naomi is a nurse practitioner in endocrinology at the University of Florida Shands Hospital. Hi, Naomi.
Hi.
Let's talk about parenting.
Okay.
We have two children. Naomi just had our second child in September, Hazel and Henry. And so we thought we'd start with our family planning because it took us quite a bit of planning for several years to get to this stage. So why don't you talk a little bit about how we started planning?
Yeah, as a same-sex couple, we had to plan out every step of how we wanted to build our family. And for us, we knew that one of us was going to get pregnant.
Not me.
Yeah, that decision for Sara was very easy. And luckily for her, I was willing to do that.
Absolutely.
But we had to navigate the healthcare system, choosing our way through that and deciding that we were going to use donor sperm, finding that. So it was probably a couple years of asking questions, researching, finding a provider. What else do we, Yeah,
we're very lucky that you work in the healthcare field now. And so that made both our access and our community a little broader, I feel like, here. And Naomi works at a research hospital, so there's plenty of information accessible for us.
and I think we had some role models that we reached out to in our community, other same-sex couples, to ask about how they went about things, because there's no real model for that. But once we found a provider, we decided where we were going to get donor sperm. We decided on a timeline that we both agreed on, and then we kind of went from there.
Yeah, so I think we should talk a little bit about our timeline. Will you tell everyone where we were at that point in our life, like all of our many jobs and things? What were all the hats we were wearing?
This was probably in 2017 that we started talking about this. And at that time, I was working as an RN in the hospital, and you were working at Gainesville High School as a ceramics teacher. And I was in school part-time earning my doctorate. I had my doctorate in nursing practice, and we were sort of looking, I was hoping not to have a newborn while I was still working full-time and in graduate school. So that was our motivation for figuring out a time to have a baby. I would say we planned it pretty well.
Yeah, we are very lucky. So Naomi's job and my job did not have maternity leave since I was not the carrying parent. I had no maternity leave available. And Naomi's job, but even though she works in research hospital, also did not.
Right. I can get FMLA and be on short-term disability. That's kind of how maternity leave works.
Yeah, so we had to save our vacation days, both for several years. So we took those 2 years to save vacation days so that Naomi had enough time built up to compensate for being off work that long to be able to take a normal maternity leave. And we had to calculate the calendar correctly and just hope that we were able to get pregnant in one of our first couple tries so that our daughter could be born right when summer starts so that I could use summer from school, which I feel like is normal for a lot of teachers to use maternity leave.
Yeah, we were just really lucky that it worked out that way.
We were very, very lucky. Yeah.
Yeah, when I graduated from my program, I was 35 weeks pregnant.
Yeah, so Hazel walked the stage with you.
Yeah, she did. And that was 2.5 years ago.
Yes, exactly.
Before we move on, I want to just mention that part of the planning was figuring out the costs of all of this, saving money to buy donor sperm, and pay for healthcare because a lot of this isn't covered under normal healthcare plans.
I feel like the financial piece of it added a really interesting stress bubble for both of us because the extra testing you have to go to a fertility clinic, like just all the extra work that's included, I feel like was very challenging.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people probably assume that we did IVF. Thankfully, we did not have to go that route. And that made it a lot more affordable.
Yes, we're very lucky that we did not have to do that. And we were able to just go to the office. So let's talk about bringing home our baby and what planning do you feel like was our best laid plan that worked out and the thing that didn't work out that worked out in our favor?
I think adjusting to life as a new parent is, you just never know how you're going to feel. As the person who gave birth, there's just so many factors, sleep deprivation, hormone fluctuations, adjusting to a new role. It was all very overwhelming. I don't know how you felt bringing home a newborn. I think similarly.
I think when we brought Hazel home, I was so jazzed that all this planning, like we were here, like it had happened, like let's go. So I think I had like an adrenaline rush as the non-carrying parent that kind of carried me through the sleep deprivation part a little better. I will, toot my own horn as I have been having this conversation all week with our friends about our second baby, is that I do get up almost every time with you and in the middle of the night and try to be a very supportive partner and make sure you feel supported and that you have everything you need. And I feel like with Hazel, that was, I guess, where we laid the groundwork for that. Like, I'm going to make sure that you feel supported.
Yeah, I feel like the hardest part for me as a planner is just knowing that you're not going to know how things are. As soon as you get to know this newborn, their routine shifts, things change, and all you can know is that every day is going to be a little bit different. And as you compare week by week, things are, slowly changing, some big leaps, some things incrementally, but it's a lot of unknowns. Who is this person that you're meeting? What are they going to be like? And I think for me and for both of us, never having a newborn, there were just questions. Is this normal? Even as a healthcare provider, it's different being having your own child. Sarah's always asking me, how can you have these questions? You work in healthcare, but it's different when you're a parent. But yeah, it's just so many unknowns, which is a part of what I think the biggest thing that I struggled with.
I would agree. So I want to talk some about new identity because I feel like our identity as a couple shifted when we became parents. Your identity as, as your person changes, your identity in your career was changing. And then we hit COVID. So let's talk a little bit about identity change and expectations, because I feel like that's a big one for us that we're still navigating today.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much responsibility that you carry as a new parent and figuring out, how everything else fits back into your life again. How do you go back to work? And for me, I was going back to work to my job as a floor nurse, knowing that I was going to take my board soon and then apply for other jobs. So it was a pretty hectic time. And we both sort of went back to work. Actually, you had more time off than I did with Hazel because I actually had to stop working a little bit early because I was having issues with my blood pressure. So I went back to work when she was 7.5 weeks old. And I think you went back to work when she was like 9 or 10 weeks old.
Yeah, I think she was almost 10 weeks when school started back.
So I think, it kind of felt like warp speed when you're in that early newborn stages of just trying to figure out everyone's roles in the family and how to keep this tiny person happy. So there was a lot of stress for me, and I think for you watching me.
Yeah, I would say as the support person, it was really challenging because I'm a control freak and a fixer. And so not being able to fix those things and really give you the space to process them as you needed to is a challenge I was not adequately prepared for.
But I mean, I think during those weeks, we were also lining up our childcare, and for us, it was super important that we wanted someone to be kind of one-on-one with Hazel, especially during her first year of life. So we focused a lot on trying to find childcare, and we ended up using care.com, right?
Yes.
And I think we posted our bio and what we were looking for before she was born and started getting, I guess, applicants for this position, and ended up, I think, interviewing 4 or 5 people, hiring a few people to try out. The first person didn't work out, and then finding our current nanny who's still with us. And that was quite the journey.
Can you talk a little bit about that fear when that didn't work out? Because I remember that very vividly, and it was terrifying.
We both ended up taking time off from work because of our schedules sort of sometimes overlapped, and I worked on weekends. So we had good chunks of time where we could just each one of us be home with Hazel. And then we ended up both taking a little bit of time off to try to figure things out when things didn't work out with the first person. And then we just felt really lucky to have found our current nanny who loves our children like her own. But I think we even contemplated you leaving your job at that point.
Yeah, so that's what I was thinking about. So going back to work and having a tiny infant and your spouse struggling at their job because they don't want to be away, and then not feeling comfortable with the childcare decision you've made, I think was one of the more traumatic experiences we had. And so Naomi luckily worked 2 days. It was like 2 days on and 2 days off, right? So if you worked like Monday, Tuesday, 1 week, then you worked Thursday, Friday the next. So for a couple weeks, we rotated. I would take that Monday, Tuesday off at the high school, which put, my work life in chaos because I was teaching all 6 classes a day, had over 200 students, and they just put a random sub in there that doesn't know clay. So I'd come back and find, hundreds of pounds of clay dried everywhere and projects broken. And so it was very, very stressful, I feel like. And for all of our planning and interviews and reference checks, I think it was really upsetting to be going through that. And so we were just lucky that when we contacted, our nanny's name is Caitlin, when we contacted her, she was one of the first people we had spoken with, and then she wasn't moving here until school started. So the timing didn't work out. So then when our first caregiver didn't work out, I contacted her back, and she actually didn't like where she had started. So she came over and started working for us. and it started part-time, just 2 days a week, whichever day of the days of the school week that Naomi had to be on the nursing floor. So she was here like 1 week, she'd be here Monday, Tuesday, and then come help out a few hours another day. And then the next week she'd be here Thursday, Friday. And then over time, I feel like we've added hours.
I know, we were talking about routines a little bit. I think that there's so much change that happens in that first year. Like once you lock down a routine, things are going to change again. And just sort of knowing that you're going to have to take time and reevaluate things on a daily or weekly basis is kind of helpful going into it. I don't feel like either one of us is really the primary caregiver. I think especially now with 2 kids, we're sort of like dividing and conquering
Yeah.
who's going to be taking care of who. And, we try now to sort of protect our family time when we're both home, spending time as a family, but that inevitably means with a newborn and a 2.5-year-old that sometimes you're still doing things separately.
I think we divide and conquer well, and I'll take Henry, and then it's time for him to eat, so then we trade back, and then I have Hazel, and it's a lot of moving parts. And I think that leads me into talking about balance, because I know for people in the creative fields like I am, and like you were always a part of and still dip your toe in when you want to. Naomi and I met here at the University of Florida in a ceramics class. Naomi did a post-bac in ceramics at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln and was going to go on to graduate school before she decided to go back to nursing school instead. So she still makes in our studio, and only friends and family get to see those pots and own them, which are highly coveted, I have to say. So I feel very lucky that being married to another maker, you have a really great understanding of my need to make. And so when I'm about to burst and I'm like, I have to get to the studio, I have severe, intense object lust, like I'm a maker, I have to be making. You're very understanding about giving me that space for the balance in our home.
I mean, I think part of balance is trying to give yourself time to have moments where you're not solely, in charge of this child, and having breaks in your day. I think for you, that's just like being in the studio is super refreshing and kind of feeds you.
Absolutely.
And trying to figure out what that is for each person.
Yeah, it's intense. And I feel very lucky that, I'm so supported that, financially, because of our studio business and because I was able to leave my job, and we can come back to that in just a minute. I want to ask you some questions about that. Because you were definitely the nudge I needed for that decision to happen. And I want to move a little bit into talking about COVID, right? Like being parents right now to tiny people is stressful. Mm-hmm. We had, in our great planning, right? We had planned how far apart we wanted our children to be. We had planned when we could save enough days again for you to go on maternity leave again. And I wondered if you could talk a little bit about early COVID and being home with our baby when it was just Hazel, and then compare that to now. Like, we definitely did not think we would be here.
Yeah, I mean, I think COVID changed a lot of our parenting plans. I think we sort of planned, Hazel will be home for a year with our nanny. Then we wanted to put her in school, and having COVID happen right when I think she was 9 months old, we knew that we weren't going to feel comfortable with that. So we had to, shift things around financially. You started working from home for the remainder of the school year. And that was right around the time that I was about to start my new job as a nurse practitioner. For the rest of the year, we basically didn't have any. Well, there was like a 4 to 6 week period that we were just sort of like all home. I was like in that transitional period. You were working from home, and we weren't even seeing our nanny. We weren't seeing anybody.
Yeah, I think that's one of for as traumatic as the experience was when it started, those are some of my happiest memories of Hazel. We're both home. We saw her first steps together in the living room. There's so many firsts for her that are around that 9 month till her first birthday, where I feel like everything, like I moved my studio home from the studio. We cleaned out the garage and I worked in the studio for the next, or in the garage as my studio for the next 6 months. My work changed. I just feel like that's the where I feel like our transition as a family really gets dramatic.
Yeah, and we had to decide because we were going to put Hazel in school in the fall, and we decided not to do that. And we had to make plans with our nanny of how that was going to work out and figure out how many hours she was going to need because we weren't really comfortable with her working for other families with young kids. So we kind of had to restructure your work schedule.
Let's talk about that because so the last time I was on the show was about that time, and I was on leave from GHS, and we were making decisions about whether or not to go back. So just a little precursor, I had shingles that summer from stress. As it got closer to the school year and we were talking about going back in person, my numbers in, we live in Florida, so our COVID numbers were very high and my student numbers were very high of how many people were going to be in my classroom. We had to make some decisions about whether or not I was going to keep my job, and I was very stressed. So can you talk a little bit about that? Because I mean, obviously I know what it is from my experience. It was terrible. And it was a ton of stress because I had built this huge high school program and I have students nationally recruited to some of the best colleges in the country. And then on the other side of that, we have a ceramic studio business where my studio is, and we have studio assistants and run community classes. So we have a very full plate that I feel like had kind of come to a stop for us for a while because of COVID.
It was a strange period where we just didn't know what was going to happen, just like the rest of the country. And I think that summer, not knowing what you were going to do with your job was pretty stressful for both of us. And then we realized that you probably could take leave, and that gave us more time to figure things out. I started a new job, and I was very grateful not to be in an inpatient setting in the hospital where there were a lot more COVID patients, and starting to see patients in an outpatient setting gave us a lot of relief.
It allowed me to go into the studio like full force, which I feel like had never happened. I think it's really common when we leave graduate school to be on this high of making and, oh, I have to be teaching and I'm going to do this residency and then I'm going to take this sabbatical replacement. And I think when COVID happened and the world shut down was the first time since I left graduate school in 2012 that I stopped making. And I stopped making for weeks. I didn't even stop making when Hazel was born. I would go at night after everybody went to bed. I would sneak away while you guys were napping. And, I'd go over there sometimes 3 times a day just to cover things. And when COVID happened, that was the first time in years I stopped making. And so when I went back to the studio and it was like, oh, this can be what I do now, along with manage our business, which to go from, 2 full-time jobs to 1 seems crazy now not to do that. But at the time, I didn't have an off button. So I think that you giving me that permission, like you don't need to do this anymore, was really important. So can you talk about how we got to that conclusion?
What I remember from that time is, because it was the summertime, you brought the studio home, and so we kind of put the business on pause. We just said, you were just going to focus on making, and that, was how you were dealing with stress. And we weren't running classes. We weren't doing anything. The only thing we were doing was that Clay at Home series to try to give people a creative outlet, because we just, didn't know how to really keep ourselves safe. And we have such a small space at the studio. So it was a time that we were just kind of like focused on being a family, and you were just working on things. And I know that's kind of when your work shifted a little bit too, in terms of what you're making and color palette and all that. But then making the decision for you not to be on leave for that year and just take that time to figure out, was the studio going to be sustainable for us? And, me in the background, just sort of getting experience at my new job and still, watching all of Hazel's milestones as we navigated COVID. But it was a strange time. We didn't even see family. It was just the three of us on her first birthday.
Yeah, it was. I feel like that was like really magical to me when I think about that now.
We'll be right back after a quick word from our sponsors. This episode of the podcast is sponsored by Amico Brent. For the past 100 years, Amico Brent has been creating ceramic supplies for our community, ranging from underglazes to electric kilns, and they have no plans of slowing down. With over 3,000 products, Amico Brent's top priority is making sure that all of their customer needs are met. From the professional to the student and everyone in between, their high-quality materials enable you to make your best work. To learn more, check them out at amico.com or on Instagram and Facebook at Amico Brent. You can also show them how you use Amico by sharing your work online with the hashtag HowIAmico. Today's episode is brought to you by the Rosenfeld Collection of Functional Ceramic Art. The collection exists as an online resource for research and inspiration, featuring photos of thousands of objects made by over 800 artists. The images are high quality and can be used with no permission required, making them a great resource for students and teachers. To find out more, visit rosenfeldcollection.com.
I really want to talk about how we decided to continue expanding our family. We just expanded and had Henry a couple months ago, and you just started back to work this week off maternity, 2 days ago. Let's talk about that. And so can you tell the audience a little bit about our decision after waiting for the vaccines to come out and things?
Yeah, there was so much of a question about that. Well, there was a period of time where the fertility clinic that we used was not helping people get pregnant because they didn't think it was safe. So we knew that was going on, but we weren't quite ready for our second anyway. And then we were sort of watching the vaccines being developed and waiting for that to come out. And at the time, I reached out to our fertility doctors and said, should I get the vaccine during pregnancy? And they basically said, we're not recommending it. I know that has since completely changed, but that was what they were telling us at the time. So we decided that we were going to wait till I could be vaccinated. I was able to get vaccinated early because of my job. And then we were sort of planning to have a second child around when Hazel was 18 months. And thankfully it did. We were able to stay on track with that.
Yeah, I feel like we were very lucky again for you to get pregnant quickly.
But I think, we thought once the vaccine was here that things would be things would be winding down.
It felt that way.
It felt that way at the time. I mean, we didn't know for sure, but, we thought that was going to be happening. So we felt more comfortable getting pregnant at that time, knowing that I could be protected at work and that, people all around the country could be getting vaccinated.
So let's talk about how that worked out, because here we are with another variant and holiday surges.
Yeah, I mean, we're still in our bubble, basically, because we have young children at home. We don't feel safe taking risks that aren't necessary. So we've definitely kept things really close. We do things outside. We are masking. I wonder how if she's going to have memories from this time and what she's going to think about, because she knows when we're around other people, we wear masks. She asks every time we get in the car, do we need to wear masks? And thankfully she's been receptive to that, and she understands, as much as she can as a 2.5-year-old. But, I think we're all a little bit, or I'm still in shock that we're still having to do all these things. But, it's what we have to do to keep our family safe.
I know how I feel, but and I feel like this is something we've talked about, but I would like to talk about it now. Do you feel like our second child has been much more challenging based on what the world is going through, because, you know, your parents aren't retired yet, and we don't have family that lives close by. So can you talk a little bit about this experience for us and how it's been having a baby during a pandemic, and how much we rely on our nanny and why we're so close?
You know, when we got pregnant that time, we thought, well, things are just going to numbers will start to decline and things will look better. Then the Delta variant happened, and I think maybe 4 to 6 weeks before he was born was when it was at its peak here. And that was pretty stressful, being pregnant through that and just not knowing, you know, we were giving birth in the hospital. How is that going to be? And by the time he was born, things were looking better. And it was kind of our new normal. So we just knew, you know, we were going to have to be wearing masks. But it did make things stressful. I mean, I think every day we're still a family that thinks, you know, what are the risks in every situation, especially with having a newborn. You know, that just brings in a whole other dynamic.
Absolutely. Dynamic's a good way to describe that here.
But I mean, because both of our families live elsewhere, we've had to figure out, you know, childcare that works for us and works with both of our work schedules. I feel lucky that you have a work schedule that's more flexible than mine. So, you know, if you need to take the kids to the doctor or, you know, do something for our household, then you have the flexibility to do that. Whereas, you know, I need to be at work and be present and be focused during the hours that I have to be there.
Absolutely. And so let's talk about that a little bit. So I left my job last year. I took the CARES Act leave in the fall. I was given a unpaid sabbatical leave in the spring to make a decision whether or not I wanted to stay in the school system. And we decided for our family it was best if I left the school system. And so in that time, in the past year, we've expanded our studio. We've added a bunch of equipment. We've taken on hosting an apprenticeship. We were awarded the Studio Potter apprenticeship grant this year for our studio assistant, who's one of my former students, Jack Manfredi. And Jack has been, I feel like, pivotal in our ability for me to be on a sort of maternity leave with you this whole time. We hired a recent University of Florida grad to teach my classes at the studio. And so we've been very fortunate that we have these people to support us so that we can do this. And so I feel like our experience, as much as of planners as we both are, is pretty dramatically different than from where we started. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think starting out, we didn't foresee being here.
No, I don't think I was planning to leave the high school. I don't think we were planning to push the studio as hard as we have. It's been very exciting. I feel like, under the circumstances.
You want to talk a little bit about having a second child and how that has changed things for us? I mean, we're 12 weeks in. He's 12 weeks today.
Yeah, he is. I feel like it makes everything harder and sweeter at the same time. I feel like Henry adds this like happiness that I feel like you always feel like this when you have kids. You don't know what's missing, or that there is something that could be better. And he is the smiliest, sweetest, happiest baby. He's just full of smiles and giggles and snuggles. And I feel like it makes it harder to leave and go to the studio. And I'm so thankful that we have this time and that I am able to kind of come and go, right, as the parent that can be home for doctor's appointments and physical therapy and those kind of things. I feel like I'm very, very lucky and fortunate to be able to do that and kind of come back and forth to work.
Yeah, but did you find things harder this time?
Oh God, it's so much harder.
And I feel like I have the opposite perspective.
Tell me.
That it was just so hard. I mean, at least now we have something to compare to.
Oh.
With what is normal for a newborn, or what to expect, and having some experience with just anything, how noisy they are sleeping, navigating breastfeeding, healing from childbirth, all those things seem to go just a little bit smoother this time.
Yeah, I feel like this our experiences have flip-flopped. I feel like the second baby was much harder on me, and like my expectations and that that illusion of balance, what that is, how often I would be able to leave the house and go work. I again this time I had taken, I guess I took like really 8 weeks off, right? Total from the studio. I managed like the day to day, like emails and things, but like as far as being there, like it was very, very rare that I went for 8 weeks. And so I'm just now kind of going back this week. And so managing that expectation has been much more challenging for me than I thought it was going to be, because I had hit, I feel like, such a heavy stride in making in my work and things like that. And so it was very hard for me this time to kind of stop.
Yeah, and it's hard. I mean, we already felt really busy having one child, and now adding in a newborn who has a lot of physical needs and, needs to be held and has much less independence than our 2.5-year-old. She's like just talking and running and is doing a great job at keeping herself busy when she needs to. But I mean, trying to figure out how you're going to fit things into an already busy home life has been interesting. But again, they just change so much every day. And I feel like I've had a lot more understanding that this time is short, that there will be an end to waking up 3 to 4 times a night.
Will there? Because of previous life experience, I'm able to focus a lot more on appreciating those moments. I feel like I don't always do it well, but I definitely try to concentrate on that. Like I could make 10 less things this week, and that's just fine with me, or whatever the number is. There's no magic number, but that amount of time that I can be here doing things, I feel like is so much more important to me, to give myself that permission. Because I feel like definitely with the pressure of social media and the older I get and the longer I do this for a living, the harder it gets, and the smaller the top of the pyramid is, I feel like. And I do feel a ton of pressure as a maker and a person in our field, to be constantly making, to be constantly showing, to be posting the images of the new work and talking about it constantly. And they take all that away. And I love that. I love that about that I can separate those things now in a way, even I feel like with Hazel, I couldn't, but I feel like with Henry, I can. So let's talk about how much Hazel loves pots.
She does. She's not a child that likes getting dirty, but she does like getting dirty in the studio, which I know you appreciate.
I do. I was a kid that would not touch the sandbox and get dirty, but I want to be covered in mud all day. And Hazel definitely is there. She's been coming to the studio, since she was born. I would wear her decorating pots that I had to finish for shows when she was first born. And now she can stand next to me while I throw and get her hands wet and not knock the pot off center. And she wants to touch it while I'm making it. And it's fantastic. And how has that experience been for you as a maker who has taken a long break from in between all of your nursing and doctorate education to now to go back into our studio and make with our daughter?
Yeah, I mean, I think she's actually brought me back into the studio because it's a fun activity for her, and I get to see it through her eyes, and she's so excited about anything that happens in the studio. Even just climbing a stool to wash her hands is thrilling.
Absolutely.
So it's been really fun to see it through her, have her learn about what you're doing there, and she loves it. She loves wheel throwing. It's very exciting. She loves using the tools on the clay and putting insane amounts of water on the wheel, watching it spin off. And so it's all just very exciting, an exciting new world for her. And it's super fun for me to see her get so excited about everything.
Absolutely. And I think, so we teach Mommy and Me's at the studio on Saturday mornings, and we get to do a lot of the projects. We test them with Hazel. So can you talk about some of those we've done?
Yeah, I mean, you've occasionally brought stuff home for her to do. So sometimes she gets to be, or she gets the benefit of the extra projects that didn't get used.
To practice
And
one.
now, I mean, anytime we say we're doing an art project, she just assumes that you're bringing clay home and we're doing something with clay. Or we're going to bring her to the studio and she gets to make something.
And she also has quite a collection. Can you talk just about like a few of the pieces our friends have made her?
She has a shelf in her room of the things that she's made with you.
And that people have met her, made her.
Made her, yeah.
Those two.
What does she have?
Andrew McIntyre made her own cup that has her name on it, and he's soda fired and sent from Ole Miss. Tammy Marinuzzi made her own cup that she carries around and kisses. Those are her two favorites, I feel like, right now.
Yeah, and then she has the things that she made with you.
Yes, she has her animal cup that has her zebra, her Zoe the zebra on it. So we did animal cups for a couple weeks at the studio. Those were super fun. So I threw child-sized mugs, and then you built the animal's head and could make the handle, the tail, and things. So the kids build on top of them with their parents, and then we glaze them with like stroking coats or something we can once fire. And so she got to do the first one of those. Those were super fun.
Yeah. But I also think we should talk a little bit just about this time period right now.
Okay, so what are some of your favorite things? Like, what's the good stuff? What are our go-to things that keep our house sane?
One thing we learned is having an exercise ball. Henry loves to be bounced to sleep on an exercise ball. It was the best $15 we ever spent.
And Hazel thinks it's the best exercise she's ever had.
Yes, she thinks it's a great toy.
Yeah. And so the exercise ball goes from room to room in our house all day and is one of the most used things.
Yeah, the other thing that's been indispensable to Hazel is her Lovey, which is like this little like stuffed animal square blanket. And she has 3 of them that are her best friends that she sleeps with. And one of them who's her best friend, who she carries around all day, every day.
Yes, little kitty has to be in her shirt.
In her hand.
In her hand, has to experience everything with her. Little kitty goes to the studio with us and has to watch her make pots.
She introduces little kitty to anybody we see.
Yeah, I don't know what we would do without the levies. That was definitely how we got her, severely supported the sleep training initially, was having the levies.
And her white noise machine.
Yeah, I don't know how people survive that don't have a white noise machine for their kids.
Especially right now, having 2 kids. You know, Henry naps 4 to 5 times a day. So he's got his white noise machine. Hazel naps once a day. Sometimes we're just choreographing naps all day.
Going from one bedroom to the other. Oh, I know what else I was going to say. The sleep sacks. Can you talk about the adventure of the sleep sack?
Yeah, Hazel wore the sleep sack until she was, which is kind of like a wearable blanket. Sort of looks like a sleeping bag on the bottom with snaps on the top.
Yeah, it zips up around them. It has a little, is it a duck?
Egg?
A little egg thing that has beans in it. And so it acts as like a little bit of a weight.
Yeah. So she slept with that until right after she turned 2. She told us she was done with it. But she would shuffle around the house in it after she learned how to walk.
Looking like Baby Yoda.
Yeah. And Henry's still doing swaddle blankets, so we're not quite there yet with him.
We are dreaming of the end of the swaddle. Okay, what about favorite books? Because we are a huge book family. There are books everywhere in this house.
She loves The Harold and the Purple Crayon. She goes through phases. What's her new favorite at bedtime?
Where the Wild Things Are. We got out a little library this week. We had our neighbor built one of the little libraries at the end of their driveway.
We went through a phase of They All Saw a Cat, which I love that book. It's all about perspective and different animals viewing a cat and how big or small it might look.
That was a favorite.
That's with that book for a long time.
Oh, Goodnight Moon is a favorite, and we can all recite it, including Hazel. And her new bedroom, so we moved Hazel into a new room in our house for when Henry was born, so that we didn't have to redo the nursery. And so we let her pick. So I painted murals in both kids' rooms before they were born. So Hazel's is mountains, because our happy place when we do vacation, which is rarely, is in North Carolina on the Blue Ridge. And so I painted mountains, like very low, rumbly mountains, in Hazel's room. And so when we wanted to move her to her new room, and we were making a big deal about this is going to be your new room, we let her pick. And I said, what do you want on your wall? And she said, I want the goodnight moon. And so I painted a huge mural on her wall with a dark blue sky and rolling clouds where you can see the sun is setting, the sun's reflecting in the clouds, and the moon's up, and I painted stars. And so every night when we put Hazel to bed, we have to hold her up. Now, I wish I had not painted the moon so high up. And she has to touch the moon and touch the stars and say goodnight moon. So goodnight moon is still a favorite here.
And I think we're definitely a family that prioritizes sleep. So we had to put blackout shades and curtains in both of these rooms.
The sun sets on the front of our house, so it makes afternoon naps for the kids really challenging. It's very, very bright. So we started with the blackout curtains, and that did not do enough. So we had to go full black shade over the top and curtains over the top of that. And it's still a little bit light in each room in the afternoons in the summer when we're putting them down. But it's winter here now, so it gets dark at 5:30, so we're good. But the naps are still challenging. Is there anything else you want to talk about today, Dr. Mostkoff? What do you think?
I think we did a good job.
Yeah, I think so.
Hopefully, we didn't leave anything out.
Yeah.
Every day is different.
Well, I think that's about all we have for today. Thank you for listening to our story. If you have any questions at all for Naomi and I, you can email us. You can find us on our website and Instagram at Studio TM Ceramics and studiotmceramics.com. My personal page is saratruman.com. And yeah, we'd love to hear from you. So if you'd like to reach out, please do. And thanks for listening to the show. We hope you have a great day. And congratulations to Ben and his wife. We're so honored to be chosen to do this week's episode and talk about our parenting journey. I feel like it's a conversation I would love to hear more about in our field. And I'm so happy Ben is doing this and joining the parenting journey.
You can listen to more parenting stories next week on Tales of the Red Clay Rambler.
Yay! All right.
If you'd like more information on the artists on the show, or if you'd like more information about the workshops and events that I'll be having in the next couple months, you can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook under Carter Pottery. Another great way to support the show is to leave me a comment on iTunes. To do that, search Tales of a Red Clay Rambler under iTunes Podcasts, and you'll find a page that's linked to our show. Thank you guys for the support.
We respectfully acknowledge and honor all Indigenous communities whose lands we reside on in the United States, and recognize that we are uninvited guests on the occupied, unceded, and ancestral lands of over 500 nations indigenous to North America. By acknowledging and reflecting upon the contemporary lived experiences and histories of the Indigenous peoples here and globally, we may begin to take essential steps towards creating a more equitable world. Learn more through the hashtag Honor Native Land initiative of the U.S. Department of Arts and Culture, and consider contributing to Indigenous-led organizations doing important work to further health and wellness, sovereignty, and self-determination of the first people of the lands you reside. This podcast is a production of the Brickyard Network, an extension of the Archie Bray Foundation for the Ceramic Arts. To find out more about our lineup of ceramic podcasts, visit brickyardnetwork.org.
Mama,
Hey, babe.
I'm eating a donut.
I see that.
I like donuts.
Where did you get a donut?
Mama, Sister Morgan comes here, and she had donuts for me.
How about that?